EU terrorism situation and trends. The report will be presented by Mr. Jean-Philippe Lecouffe, who, as you know, is the Deputy Executive Director for Operations.
Hello,
Mr. Lecouffe. Bonjour. I will give him the floor for 7 minutes, and then there will be a round of political groups and a final reply by Mr. Lecouffe, and that will end the debate on this issue. I would like to go straight to the report. Again, Mr. Lecouffe is also a very well-known, I wouldn't say a household name, but very, very familiar face as well in this committee. So, Mr. Lecouffe, thanks for being here again, and let's go straight to the point. The floor is yours for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, dear members of the Libe Committee. It is thank you to welcome Europol today to present you the main findings of the EU Terrorism Situation and Trend Report 2024, the so-called TSAT. I will speed up a little bit my presentation in order to leave you time for questions. Well, next slide, please. First, I want to focus on the methodology. You have the main information on the slide, but what I wanted to say, to remind you, is that this report is an annual trend and situation report, and it's not a threat assessment of what is coming on this. This year, we have, so this report is covering year 2023. We have reviewed also the methodology following especially the guidance that you given to us in the last hearing from the last report. And this methodology has been reviewed and rediscussed and clarified to make clear that the focus of this report is to present the data of the terrorist threat in Europe in the year concerned, and also to focus on the key developments that we have seen on this area. And this is done to enhance our understanding and also to tailor our response to the terrorist threat. This report is based on verified operational information contributed by the member states and also enriched by the information that Europol has from the operation that we have supported, the operation of the member states that we have supported. Eurojust is also providing information about the judicial outcome of the investigation on terrorist offence. So the report that you have in front of you is about that. Next slide, please. What are the key findings? First, this TSAT report clearly confirms that terrorists remain a key threat to the EU security. I would like to give you a few numbers. There's a lot more in the report, but you will go to it. In total, in 2023, 120 terrorist attacks were executed or prepared throughout 7 EU member states. It's an increase compared to 2022. 426 suspects were arrested in the EU for suspicion of terrorism-related offences, and this number also increased. Finally, court proceedings in 2022 led to 290 convictions and 68 acquittal for terrorist offences. This number highlights the significance of the threat for our member states and our citizens. Again, more figures you will find in the report. Next slide, please. Let's now look at some of the main findings identified in the TSAT. In this year's issue of the TSAT report, we identify 4 key developments that are essential in our understanding of the terrorism in the EU. First, the implication of the global geopolitical situation. The 7 October 2023 terrorist attack launched by Hamas against Israel and the subsequent military response by Israel in Gaza has sparked a strong global response. It has led to heightened societal tension and a rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim rhetoric in the EU. The polarizing circumstances have been exploited by terrorist groups across the entire ideological spectrum, with the aim to recruit new followers, spread propaganda, and inspire lone actors' attack. Secondly, the targeting of youngsters for involvement in terrorist and violent extremism activities, young adults as well as terrorist propaganda and inciting to violence. Some young individuals engage online and demonstrate an ideological flexibility and a willingness to resort to violence promoted in online communities. Certain vulnerable youngsters are actively targeted for recruitment into terrorism. Third, the recurrence of the themes and narrative that often propose common objective and antagonism. In the current volatile global climate, the conditions are favourable for terrorist and violent extremist narrative, conspiracy theory, and so on. And they are used to justify violence. Sometimes violence as a service is a threatening aspect of this intersection between terrorism and organised crime. 4, the key development also is the use and the capability of terrorists and violent extremists to use technology, including the use of AI, digital technology, and encryption. What is the Europol response? In less than 1 minute, we have the European Counterterrorism Centre that was created in 2016 that is actively working on that, facilitating the exchange of information, delivering first-line support to investigation of the member states. More than 1,000 of these investigations were supported in 2023. And we try to stay at the forefront of the innovation and research. We also provide operational analysis. We help in the tracking the financing of terrorism, and we have CBRN capacity. And lastly, we provide also through the EU Internet Referral Unit services to the member states and for the implementation of the terrorist content online regulation in order to remove from the online services the terrorist propaganda. All of this to secure better our fellow citizens in the EU. Thank you very much.
Merci, Mr. Lecouffe. I forgot to welcome Mrs. Anna Sjöberg, who is the head of the European Counterterrorism Centre, and accompanying Mr. Lecouffe in their appearance before this committee. So now we start with the round of political groups for 1.5 minutes each, and we have the EPP, Mr. Thomas Tobé, taking the floor. Mr. Tobé, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and a warm welcome to our committee, and also for a very interesting but worrying report. I think it is quite clear that we need to make it our top priority during this mandate that we give Europol the tools that are actually, and resources that are actually needed to meet the threats that we face, so we can keep Europe safe. I have basically 2 questions. In the report, it is already mentioned the link between terrorism and organised crime, and to be a bit more specific on Iran actually using criminal networks in Europe to as proxies, basically. And my question is, in your view, what do we need to do more to make sure that we also can stop these hostile regimes to foster this link that we actually see now with the criminal network? Because this is deeply worrying, what we have already seen, and there's nothing that says that we will have less of this in the future. Secondly, of course, I know that we need to trust on a lot of information from our intelligence services. And I know, of course, that in many times we just have to trust the information that we get from third parties when it comes to planned attacks. But in your view, what do we need to make sure that we actually can foster the cooperation between Europol and the intelligence services that we have? Because if we are not successful in that, we will not be successful at European level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tobe. We're going to take the questions in two groups of 8 of them, and Mr. Lecouffe will reply to them. For S&D, Mr. Juan Fernando López Aguilar is going to take the floor.
Yes, thank you, and of course we always appreciate the insights and the works of Europol and your explanations for that matter, particularly when it comes to terrorism, the Terrorism Situation and Trend Report, the so-called TSAT. And once we go through the readings and the findings of the work you carry out, at least I would raise the following points that you should comment on. First, it's noticeable that terrorism attacks are on the rise, but there is a significant share of acquittals. After the arrests and the convictions, which are numbered by 200, still there is a significant, by 70 or something, acquittals. According to your analysis, to your insights, what is the ground for those acquittals? False charges, false accusations, or simply lack of enough evidence of the implications of the persons that were arrested or convicted or brought to trial? Second, it is also noticeable that there is a perseverant number of terrorist offences related to so-called nationalist separatist movements. When you go through it, then there's always the PKK, the Kurdish PKK, but there is also Corsic separatist nationalist movement. Is there anything else to this perseverance of nationalist separatist kind of terrorism, which is something that really calls for attention? And then when it comes to trying to counter these statistics, the following short questions. First, what is to be done in order to decrease the trend, because it's on the rise? What is to be done? What could be the contribution of Europol to decrease the trends, particularly when it comes to media and digital technology, artificial intelligence used for the sake of terrorist organizations or terrorist attacks, and recruitment of young adults and minors, people underage, which are the new landscape of the commitment of criminal offences.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. For PFE, it will be Madame Sorel who will be taking the floor. The floor is yours, Madame Sorel.
Bonjour, je tiens à vous remercier pour la grande qualité.
Good afternoon. Well, I'd like to thank you for the excellent quality of your report, which I read very carefully, because this is crucial for the security of our countries. Now, there are some matters, however, that need a bit of clarification. Now, the bit that looks at geopolitical developments in the Middle East, you say that the crisis in Gaza has also given Hamas the possibilities of financing, some of which comes from the European Union. Could you give us some clear examples of that? And could you estimate how much money you're talking about? Secondly, the section on displacements linked to terrorism, you specified that some fighters escaped or were liberated from detention centres and then were in the European Union in 2023. Could you tell us how these potential terrorists reached Europe. Have they now been arrested, or are they still free? Are they therefore a threat to our societies? And I also want to know what your position is on the fact that states are agreeing to take back jihadi fighters who went out to fight and which then returning are a threat to our societies. And finally, I would like to know whether you are aware, because this is a reality, and I'd like colleagues to listen to this carefully. Are you aware of the fact that European programs that aim to brainwash people in Muslim countries are, and to bring people in from Muslim countries, are currently used to get people who come to the European to be against European societies? I mean, if we bring in talent from abroad, we prevent the development of these countries because, I mean, the goal is to try and work in the areas where terrorism comes from. So I think it's important to work against radicalizing young people in the global south.
In this first group that will be answered by Mr. Lecouffe be ECR. Mrs. Kanko, you're taking the floor?
Okay. Thank you very much for coming today and for your presentation and also for the report. Like many in this room, or maybe everyone, I'm very grateful for all the work that Europol is doing and all the hard-working national security organizations are doing for us to protect us mainly against terrorism. So many threats are clearly being pushed back, but we see, and we have seen it recently as well, that so many challenges remain, especially in the Christmas markets. We have seen a lot of jihadi terrorism that killed people who went to the Christmas markets to enjoy this beautiful European heritage together with their families, with their children, innocent children. So my question is the following. Is there more that we can do to support Europol and other agencies to take away this little threat that always seems to be there? It's a big source of worry for so many families. Second, I'm worried by the relatively high share of completed attacks. Of course, so many attacks are being prevented, and then they don't make the way until the statistics, yet there is a high rate of completed attacks. So why is the percentage of foil attacks not higher? Are the authorities not sufficiently aware of what's going on in certain groups? For example, certain left-wing or anarchist and separatist groups,
Thank you, Mrs.
which have a very high percentage of completed attacks. Thank you.
Mrs. Kanko. Monsieur Lecouffe, the floor is yours to answer this first group of 4 questions.
Yep, sorry. You give me 5 minutes?
No, 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes to answer, so I will be short. Sorry for that. Mr. Tobé, yes, there's some nexus between terrorism and organized crime. We see that in providing weapons and so on, but also recruitment of young criminals to commit actions. Well, we work on individuals, not on states. So then we try to convict or to find the evidence for the individuals. For the rest, it's for the justice to decide. And we welcome any, let's say, positive exchange between the intelligence services and the law enforcement. And we try to work on that in order to convince everybody that information has to be shared in Europe. Mr. Lopez Aguilar, yes, there are acquittal. I think there are acquittal because we try to prevent terrorist attack and the member states also. So it's why I think that we take action very early in the process, and sometimes you cannot find the evidence that a terrorist attack was done. On the separatist side, it is really the figures that we receive from the member states from terrorist attack. And if there's a high number linked to Corsica, it's linked to what we call a Nuit Bleue that happened in October 2023. AI and technology, for sure, are enablers. So we need to be able to monitor this, and this is related to a bigger challenge, that is how we control and how we balance the freedom of speech and the fact that we need to look for this. Mrs. Sorel, financing of terrorism, yes, we have proved, and even before the terrorist attack, there are money that is gathered from all terrorist spectrum that is gathered from the supporters in Europe. And it's why we have the TFTP, the tracking finance program. Most of the terrorists are stopped at the entrance of the EU and arrested. Sometimes, if we don't have the relevant information, again, we don't know. They try to hide, again, fake identities and so on. But as soon as they are detected, there are actions that are taken by the member states. Then after, it's for the judicial authority to decide about the follow-up. It's not us that can do on that. And yes, we know that the terrorists use any possible narrative to try to convince people to join them. So all the action that we take can be reversed or interpreted in a way to try to recruit youngsters and terrorists to come this. Mrs. Kanko, the youngsters is really one of the focus that we have today, because we have seen in organized crime, and you have all this killing committed by under 18 age people in different countries in the EU, in France, in Sweden, and all. It's for organized crime like for terrorism. And I think that we all have to take into account this. Our young are targeted by the criminal groups. This is not only about law enforcement, it's about the general politics that we have to do on that. And, well, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lecouffe. Now we resume the round of political groups with Renew.
I have a quick question, an organization question, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we vote, because some of our colleagues have to leave due to planes, and then continue maybe the discussion after?
I mean, interpretation, we have interpretation available until 1 o'clock.
We'll do it in English.
So
as
we
usual.
could, I mean, I propose you to, Mr. Lecouffe can say, but I propose you to continue until we conclude this point in the agenda and then go to the vote. I think it is best. Anyway,
then I'll make it very short, but it's going to be unfortunate because some of the votes are going to miss probably. Trois questions. Merci.
3 questions. Well, thank you very much, Executive Director. Now, questions. How does Europe deal with the increased level of propaganda online, this very powerful disinformation? That's the first question. Secondly, a regulation that is very important for the Parliament, the obligation to withdraw terrorist content online. I mean, every member state has to designate a competent authority, and this content has to be withdrawn within an hour. How does Europol act there? And do you believe that this is being implemented appropriately? Third question, could you tell us a little bit about trends in terms of terrorism? The report's very interesting, but could you tell us how these trends are worked out? What's the methodology used? Thank you.
Madame Keller, now for the Greens, Madame Brigmont, the floor is yours.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It's a bit annoying that we're running out of time now, particularly given that everyone considers this an important priority. But I would like to take this opportunity to spare a thought for the victims, the most recent victims of terrorism. While we were on holiday over Christmas, unfortunately, the far right kill, and their ideology continues to kill, so I'd like us to spare a thought for the victims and their family. Thank you very much for having taken account of our comments on the methodology for the report. That's important to highlight. You mentioned that there have been developments on this. You said that data and information is checked, but I'd like to know how and by who is information checked before it goes into the report. And then my second question relates to an element mentioned in the report, i.e. far-right and jihadi discourse have a common thread, so they're anti-government, anti-LGBT, etc. Could you tell us a little bit more on that? And I'd also like to know whether in your risk analyses linked to terrorism, well, we see more and more violent radicalisation of the far right, and that's being echoed more and more in various parliaments, and this parliament as well. Is this dimension taken account as a risk? Because it does have an effect on public opinion. And then, in line with what my colleague said, I also have a question on disinformation, particularly online. I mean, Meta's announcement that it's going to be stopping content moderation when it comes to analysing risks. Are these dimensions looked at and included in what you do as well? I mean, what's the risk when it comes to radicalisation and terrorism there? Thank you.
Merci, Madame Brigmont. And from the left, who's taking the floor? Mr. Antocci.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome. I'd like to welcome the representatives of Europol and also you, Vice Director. So firstly, let me say thank you to you. I had the opportunity to come and visit you in The Hague, and I really was confirmed in what I thought. It's very important to have Europol there, standing side by side with member states, and you do very important work against organised crime, which is something that has been a scourge in my country for many years. Now, questions. How is Europol going to deal with the issue of end-to-end cryptography? How is that going to have an effect on your de-encrypting terrorist communications? I mean, has anything been done to deal with the challenges provided by that technology? Thank you very much. And interpreting when I have to finish.
And who's taking the floor? Yes, Mr. Lurik.
Ďakujem pekne.
Thank you. Mr. Director, I'm just missing one piece of information regarding the terrorist attacks on critical infrastructure within the EU. And I'm talking, for example, about the Nord Stream attack in Slovakia, for example.
Available until 1, so we have no interpretation.
Okay, 1 p.m. sharp. Okay, my question is very simple because of the timing. Whether do you investigate also terrorist attacks on critical infrastructure, or, for example, on Nord Stream or on other critical infrastructure within the EU, or whether do you follow these investigations? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lurik. Is there any non-attached member wishing to take the floor in this final round? Okay, Mr. Lecouffe, the floor is yours for your final replies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Keller, thank you for your question. Well, first one on propaganda online. EU IRU is focused on that, trying to detect propaganda online, to refer to this propaganda to the hosting service providers or online service providers. And this is linked with the TCO, the question that you asked about the terrorist content online. We have built this per-se tool to implement TCO. It's working quite well. I just give you two figures. Since June 2023, we have referred 46,400 referral, and the member states have sent through us to the online service providers 1,406 removal orders that were all followed by the online service providers. So what I can say here is that TCO regulation is working thanks to the work of the member states, of the authorities in the member states, but also thanks to per-se, the tool that has been put in place in Europol and by Europol. And about the methodology, I just mentioned it at the beginning of my speech, so you can refer to the slide. Mrs. Brigmont, about the methodology, thank you to recognize this. It has been checked with the member states, but also with the information that we had in Europol. About the speeches, all the speeches can be used whether where they are coming from to radicalize people on one side or the other. So because there are extremists in other side. So we really monitor this narrative that are linked. It's connected also to the disinformation that you were mentioning, because often these speeches can be based on fake informations. So we try to combat this, but it's not easy. Mr. Antocci, thank you for your question. Difficult to give you a full answer on encryption in less than a few seconds, but I would say that Europol is not advocating for backdoors. Europol is for a strong encryption, but with a strong encryption, it should be possible under judicial oversight for law enforcement to access to the information that we need. We have found the right balance in the world with phone communications and so on, where we can wiretap under a judicial order some communication. It should be possible that when you make a phone call with WhatsApp or Telegram, that we can have the same resources. And we need these resources to protect our citizens, to protect their rights not to be killed, not to be raped, not to be stolen, and so on. So it's a difficult debate. It's a balance that we have to find. But in any case, we want to weaken encryption that is needed. But we need to have access to some information when it's necessary for our investigation. And for Mr. Lorick, yes, we are investigating on the infrastructure, on the attack on infrastructure, if the member states ask us for support, because we cannot seize ourselves. We need to have a request from the member states. As soon as we have these requests, we are able to support them. And so I would like to thank you all for your attention. Even if we had a short time, I hope this discussion was useful for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Lecouffe and Mrs. Sjöberg. I think that the debate has been probably short, but very focused and specific, and it's been quite illuminating for us. So thanks again for your presence in this